Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to tell you about something very exciting. I have written a new book, and I think you're going to be very interested in this book because it is so pertinent to the world and world events. Because what this new book is, world predictions, and it starts from the year of 2024 and extends to the year of 2042. Now, there's a very significant reason why I extended it to the year of 2042. Now, before I get into that, I must tell you to sign up for my free newsletter. Go to galacticcenter.org, and when you do, you will get all of my predictions delivered to your email address every week. While you're at my website, galacticcenter.org, remember to check out my Patreon club because this is where you're going to connect to me on a personal basis every week. Check out all the opportunities within Patreon. And don't forget my Galactic Planner. If you want to have all of your personal predictions delivered to your calendar in your phone or computer, go to galacticplanner.com. And don't forget, if you want to study with me, become my student, go to my online university, which is universityofvedicastrology.com. So let me tell you about what this book is all about and how I was pretty much obsessed to write it. So you see, I have been predicting with astrology for quite some time. I think a lot of you know my whole story where I am such a firm believer that to know the future is the most powerful tool and thing we can have in our hands. And astrology does that for us. We can know our future. And so what I started doing years ago was, actually it started when I went to India many, many years ago. I was asked to speak there. While I was there, I went to a Vedic astrologer, and he told me I needed to make world predictions. So upon that trip, when I returned, this was probably around maybe 2010 to 12. It's been a long time. I started really getting involved with making predictions for the world because this is called mundane astrology. And mundane astrology is not as easy as looking at a horoscope of somebody. You don't have a birth time. So essentially what you're doing is you're using all of the planets in the heavens and their transits and their relationships that they form to each other in terms of making a prediction. Because when we have Saturn conjunct Jupiter or Saturn conjunct Mars or any of these conjunctions, oppositions, squares, they create events, but it's not so easy really and truly to figure out where the event is going to be happening. With that, I have to take the charts of countries and world leaders. It's really not easy, but I can tell you that I came upon a tool, a prediction. One thing I'm always saying is, as an astrologer, eclipses are one of the most valuable tools that we have as astrologers to make predictions. But what is an eclipse based on? It's based on where the nodes of the moon are. So the nodes of the moon, which we call Rahu and Ketu in Vedic astrology, are actually, Rahu is the north node of the moon, and Ketu is the south node of the moon in Western astrology. But what these points are points in space where the moon hits the ecliptic going upward, and the ecliptic is the apparent path of the sun from our vantage point from Earth. So as the moon hits this ecliptic going upward, that's the north node, or Rahu. Where it hits going downward, that's Ketu, which is the south node of the moon. So really, if I could just boil it down, these points in space are where the sun, the earth, and the moon all align. And when they do all align, we have eclipses. So this nodal axis, which it's always opposite, I happened to notice that whenever they were in particular signs, major events of a certain quality would happen. And I really stumbled upon this. It was in 2001. I was trying to understand why that event happened September 11, 2001. And I started realizing that it was where Rahu and Ketu were that were very significant of this event. So I started to notice that Rahu was in the sign of Sagittarius. Rahu was in the sign of Gemini, while Ketu was in the sign of Sagittarius. And so then I proceeded to study when they would return there. Now, Rahu and Ketu take 18 and a half years to go through all 12 of the signs of the zodiac. They stay in one sign for 18 months, which is a year and a half. So every year and a half, they change signs, but it takes 18 and a half years to go through all 12 of the signs. So I started looking back 18 and a half years from September 11, 2001. And I arrived at 1982. At first it didn't hit me what happened because I was thinking about some catastrophic, attack or something. And then it hit me, the AIDS virus. And actually the AIDS virus has killed more people continually over a long period of time than really any other major virus. Of course, that's questionable, but still, let me make my point. That was the AIDS virus. Then if I went back 18 and a half years prior to that, what year did I arrive at? 1963. And of course, many of you will realize that was the year that President Kennedy was assassinated. So that was a little different, but it was still a catastrophic event that changed the world. Then I went back 18 and a half years prior to that, and it was 1945. That was the bombing of Hiroshima. So with that was enough for me. This is not a coincidence. It was 2017 that I wrote this book. Rahu and Ketu are karmic destiny through eclipses. And in this book, I actually predicted, I remember I wrote it in 2017, that in 2020, we would have a life-changing event that would change the world forever. I wasn't quite sure if it was going to be disease or if it was going to be an attack. But in essence, I said, by February of 2020, there will be an event that changes the world forever. That is what I wrote in here. I said it would probably be some kind of attack. And it was. Biological warfare, a biological attack that happened with COVID. And that was exactly when Rahu was in Gemini and Ketu was in Sagittarius. And then what I do along with this and in this new book is I went through all of the signs that Rahu and Ketu will go through. And what I did was I went back historically to see what happened during those time frames, and then I applied it to what will be happening in the future. Now, there's different things that will make this time period different from the time before. And that is if we have Rahu and Ketu together with one of the outer planets, because the outer planets are another tool that we use for world prediction. And interestingly enough, Vedic astrologers, many of them don't use the outer planets. But I have found that because the outer planets stay in signs for so long, they actually have an effect on generations of people that are born with these planets in those signs, but also the development of humanity, where humanity is and how it evolves and changes. So the outer planets, as they transit through the signs, actually deal with the development of consciousness of humanity as it evolves and changes and grows and becomes more aware and conscious. So when we have Rahu and Ketu align with an outer planet, it has a monumental, extreme different effect. And I went through all of these times when the outer planets were with Rahu and Ketu and what they exuded in world events. And so taking the historical events and applying it to the future of these years, I can pretty much tell you what to expect for the next 18 and a half years. So what I did was I was in 2024, 18 and a half years later, as Rahu and Ketu go through all 12 of the signs. I've covered all 12 in this 18 and a half year span. And what you're going to find is so huge. I felt I had to write this book to show you what will be happening the next time Rahu goes into Gemini and Ketu goes into Sag. That year will be approximately around 2037 to 2038. And I think the major event that will happen will be in 2038. And another thing that I have discovered, and in this book I do give the list of the time frames of when the nodes will go into these signs. So when October 19th, 2037 through April 7th of 2039 will be when Rahu is in Gemini and Ketu will be in Sagittarius. So looking at this, going into this book, looking at those years, I can tell you something catastrophic will happen during that time. Because not only do we have Rahu in Gemini and Ketu in Sagittarius, but we will have Mars, Uranus, and Jupiter all together in Gemini with Rahu. That is catastrophic. So I picked a date. You'll see in this, I call it Explosive Day. Now it could just happen within that window of time, but I felt like when everything really lined up, it was around May 3rd of 2038. Rahu, Mars, Uranus, and Jupiter are all lined up in Gemini. Mars is violence and attacks and energy, by the way. Uranus is sudden and unexpected. Rahu, of course, is a magnifier of everything, and Jupiter makes the event even bigger. So this is going to be a time that people need to prepare. So this book will be around, and hopefully, with this preparation, people will be able to prevent things. But in the process of writing this book, I also discovered another incredibly monumental time that is coming in the future. And it is going to be 2030, when Rahu is in Scorpio and Ketu is in Taurus. So 2030 to 2031, I am seeing another hugely dramatic time. And let me give you what I think is going to be happening at this time, because I'm looking at the eclipses during this period of time. And it will be the June solar eclipse that happens June 1st, 2030, that we will have Saturn, Mars, Ketu, and Uranus aligned in Taurus. And what I have found is Uranus will be around 23 degrees of Taurus. Whenever Uranus and Jupiter have conjoined at this degree mark, something catastrophic happens. Uranus deals with sudden, unexpected events. And I'm coming into the assumption, I don't know which time is worse, 2030 or 2038. They will be quite different, but they are turning points in humanity. This is not something that's slowly growing or happening. It's some catastrophic event that happens suddenly. And I guarantee you the economy and the world at that time is going to hit bottom. Why? Because Taurus is a sign of money in the economy. Another thing is, during this time, when Uranus was 23 degrees of Taurus, it was a catastrophic time as well. There were attacks. I believe it was the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and then what followed that was the bombing of Hiroshima, but that was years later. So this is a time of serious attacks as well. So with this book, you're gonna get every year predictions all the way to the year of 2042. And all of the astrological reasons coming together. One thing I noticed too that was a very important tool in understanding all of this is that Mars happened to be the trigger. In each of these dates that I'm talking about, Mars will be involved. Mars is the energy, and when it hits those points where the slower moving planets are there for longer durations of time, Mars comes in and hits it, and boom, the event happens. You're going to learn so much about prediction, astrology, but most of all, get the answers of what years you've got to prepare and be ready for. And it's not just those years, there's many other things. And it's not just about terrible, catastrophic events. It's about wonderful things that are due to happen on our planet. What years to look out for that. When you can make your moves forward, but also when where you need to make your move to pull back. So this book will be around for a long time, and I decided I had to write it just in case I'm not here by the year of 2038, and people will be able to prepare. This is invaluable, this is important, and I hope that you will do yourself a favor and get this book to be prepared mentally, spiritually, emotionally, for the good and for the difficult, for the challenging periods as well as the empowering periods in our life. So with that, how can you get this book? You can go to my website and go to all of my books, which this is my 14th book. and you can purchase any of them. Go to galacticcenter.org. And then again, you can just go directly to Amazon and put my name in and World Predictions 2024 to 2042 and get in the know, purchase my book, and you will be prepared for the future. And that's a promise. With that, I'll say a big thank you.